of Island Avenue.
I'm planning on moving within the next few years because I'm really looking for a nice stone house with a garage, um, a basement, and maybe 3 stories high, and fireplace. Something I know that's built well and it'll stand there, and I don't have to worry about certain things messing up so soon.
I enjoy here in Eastwick because it reminds me of Oklahoma, where I grew up. You have the suburbs, and yet you're in the city. You're 5 minutes from downtown, and the improvements that they have made out here is just beautiful.
My mother and father went through a lot of physical and mental problems because of the pressure that the redevelopment put them under for a period of 22 years. This house that we're living in now, that I'm living in, was my father's house. It was my grandfather's house. The redevelopment took the title to this property in 1958. They took the title to the property in 58. We did not get the title back until 1983. The thing that killed me the most was finally we get the property back. Now this is 22 years later, right? They took this property and held the title for 22 years, held the deed. We could not rent the property out. We could not sell the property. We couldn't make any improvements unless we wanted to lose the improvements. And every year or so they would come and badger my parents to get out. Finally, after 22 years, we get the property back, and the next month I get a tax bill for 22 years of back taxes. Their justification was that, well, you lived in that property for 22 years. And I said, well, you know, so fine, we lived in a property for 20, what kind of living is that when you're held hostage in your own house? I mean, you know, we live in basically a free, and they pointed up to me, basically, you know, you live in a free country, but you really don't own anything. In actuality, you rent everything. You rent it from the government. You rent your house, you rent your car, you rent everything from the government, basically, because if you don't come across with your taxes, with your whatever they tell you that you're going to have to come across with, you lose it. I mean, it goes right back to them. So basically, the redevelopment, they came in, and it's hard because you can't point fingers at one or two people, because they changed. You know, like you would say, well, this guy said this back in 1960, and the guy you're talking to would say, well, he left the program in 62, and there were 4 guys in the same situation and the same job as he during that period. And those guys would get on the phone with me back in 1979, 1980, when I was really putting pressure on to get the house back. And they would say, well, you have a moral responsibility to sell us that house because you live in the United States and we have the right by Congress. Or you have a moral responsibility to pay this back. That's what they said. You have a moral responsibility to pay the back taxes. A guy from the redevelopment told me that over the phone. I got so mad. If I had been there, I would have punched him. You know what I mean? So that he actually had the guts to say over the phone to me that you have a moral responsibility to pay taxes for a house that we took off of you in 1958. In the past couple of years, we have like 30% a year raise in taxes down here since that time. There, with the equality, supposedly, you know, this equalization of the tax program, and so our taxes are being raised all the time. The property taxes down here. So they say, well, we're putting a new street in for you. So they go out and they put this new street in. And in order to put the street in, they have to, we used to have 2 80-year-old trees out on the front lawn there that my father planted, you know, my grandfather planted. They come in and cut the trees down, take the lawn, and move the streets to our house so that vacant field over there can have a certain depth. Because if they ever do plan to build houses in there, they want the street, the houses to have 100-foot deep yards. So they take away more of our land, basically, so that they can go over there and build a bigger field, basically, is what they've done. They build a bigger field. How much longer is the field going to remain vacant? I mean, it's going to remain vacant forever. Now, we, of course, if you look across the streets, there's like 1 refrigerator left that we haven't hauled out. But guys come down here, they see this completely vacant area, and, of course, it becomes a dumping area. If I have to go out there sometimes and threaten people to pick up their trash. I got to go out there actually and with a note and take their license plate down what they're dumping and say I'm going to turn you into the cops. And of course, and that's risky, you know. Yeah. So I can't do anything else but do it, because otherwise they're just going to dump the stuff and pull away, and that's it. Police protection down here. If you're lucky, sometimes the cops come right away if you need it. I know that one night there was a girl screaming out in the field there, and we got police protection very quickly. I mean, other times, by the way, they can't find it. If I call into the 911 number, they say, well, where are you at? I say, well, I'm at 8130 Old Lindbergh Boulevard. And they send the place over to Lindbergh Boulevard. They don't know where Old Lindbergh Boulevard is. My mail, for example, goes to Lindbergh Boulevard. The guy over at our address on Lindbergh Boulevard has actually used my wife's charges. Ran up bills on my wife's charges because the mail, if they get a new mailman who doesn't know my name, he delivers it over on Lindbergh Boulevard. Now, on the city maps, on one city map, that street is called Pontiac Street. So if you use that as it, nobody can find Pontiac Street because there's no Pontiac Street down the post office. They don't know where Pontiac Street is. If UPS is sending it, or one of the delivery companies, right, I have to send it to my parents' house so that I can get it because they can't find this area. Nobody can find this street. Nobody knows where it's at.
Well, if I had my way, I would really spend the rest of my life here because that's the meaning this place still has for me because of the fact that with all the people that have gone, my father, my mother, all the different families that I knew, and these are really my real memories, it's all part of me.
One thing, when you moved out of the house, they didn't take long to knock it down.
Tear it down.
Because I remember that day we moved, I was 19. And I had to go along with the truck to West Philadelphia. And I never realized that I would never get back there again to look at that house because they must have torn down the next day after we moved down. And that really hurt.
To get rid of it. We are at 84th and Tennicum Avenue. It used to be a church over on this corner here, and the American store was on the opposite corner, and a beer garden on the other corner. Remember that? Blues Beer Garden?
You don't remember?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like hard for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's something, yeah, this is the play. That's the playground right over there where the fence is still up.
I feel like the train tracks was closer, but it's not. Okay. Rich Miracle was here. And what was it? Lou's Bar.
Yeah.
And right down that street there, believe it or not, Patty the Bell used to live down there. And that park over there, yeah, right across from the playground. And all the guys used to play basketball in there all the time. If you want to find your boyfriend, that's where he was over there at the basketball court, because that's about the only one we had. We didn't have much recreation out here. The biggest thing we did on Sunday, you walk to the airport, and you come back home. You watch the planes come in. That was it.
Remember how you contacted me about the reunion?
Yes.
Well,
I said,
that was fun.
Yeah. When I called you, you was all for it.
Yeah.
But when I contacted the other 5 people, they were so discouraged. They said, well, where would you have it? I mean, how could you possibly do that? But I was just determined because as I got older, I started missing all the people that I knew out here in Ellenwood, and I had a longing to see them, so I decided, I said, well, we'll have it over here in the park, back over here.
Yeah. Look
and
at it.
then the people respond from the flyers that we sent out, Rosie. Wasn't that a good feeling that day?
I tell you, when we came out, it was amazing because we didn't know how many people were going to show up. And that day, when people just started coming in and the cars started lining up along the park, and then at one point we were told you couldn't get in or out. You were kind of in here, so that was it.
Yeah, you were stuck in
You were
there.
stuck.
Yeah.
And even the firemen came out because they were excited about it. They usually have nothing to do. So.
Well, that day, the first day, what really filled me up, I remember I had them play that record, say Family Reunion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that was so
everyone,
beautiful.
It was a family affair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one incident I saw this here, man, he must have grew up with him. I hadn't seen him for years. This guy was like 6 feet, and the other guy was about 5'3", and he ran up to him and grabbed him around the neck, and he wouldn't let the man go. He just hung on to him, and he cried because he was so happy to see him, And just seeing that, I was so filled up that this day was a success, and the people just demanded that. They wanted it every year afterwards,
It was definitely a success.
It was.
People just walked in the park that day with